This little boy named John ventured into a mysterious forest with his uncle, but at one point the uncle got distracted, and John became completely lost. When the uncle finally found him again, something strange happened. He suddenly abandoned the child, ignoring his cries for help and running away, leaving him to face certain death. Confused, little John wandered through the forest calling out for his family, but his desperate cries only drew the attention of a pack of starving wolves that hadn't eaten in weeks. They chased the boy through the woods at full speed until he tripped and fell to the ground. Surrounded by these savage beasts, the boy realized there was no way out. Just then he noticed a wounded wolf beside him, caught in a hunter's net and whimpering in pain. The boy reached out to touch the trapped animal, but the rest of the wolves snarled fiercely, warning him not to harm their injured companion. Summoning all his courage, John decided to free the wounded creature and treat its wound while the rest of the pack watched silently. Realizing the boy meant no harm, the wolves, led by a massive alpha, chose to let him live. Meanwhile, his family discovered that John was missing and organized a rescue team to search for him. But as a violent storm broke out, they were forced to stop their search before entering the deep forest. That night, John remained alone in the darkness, vulnerable to predators, and just as he was about to die from the freezing cold, the alpha wolf found him and carried him back to the den, protecting him as if he were his own pup. However, the boy began to cry, his small body trembling with hunger. The wolf, sensing his pain, left to hunt and soon returned with a raw fish. But the boy, of course, couldn't eat it. The wolf disappeared once more and came back carrying a piece of fruit. The child lay down with tears streaming down his face, longing for his family. The next morning, he ventured out into the forest to search for them, calling their names again and again, but no one came. Realizing he had been truly abandoned, the boy returned to the wolves and began a new life among them. In the blink of an eye, about 20 years passed. John had grown into a man, a modern-day Tarzan. He swung through vines, defended the wolves from ruthless hunters, and lived as one of them. At first, it had been hard for him to adapt to the life of a wolf, but over time, he adjusted completely. He became incredibly fast, hunted even with his teeth, and enjoyed his life in the jungle alongside his new parents, father and mother wolf. One night, however, he heard the wolves howling in the distance. When he rushed back home, he discovered that his wolf mother had died from illness, and the entire pack mourned her loss in a solemn farewell. Heartbroken, John ran through the forest without direction, unaware that at that very moment, a young photographer named Mimi had arrived on the same island, drawn by the legend of the Tear of Polaris, a hidden lake deep within the forest. During her journey, she unexpectedly encountered John bathing under a waterfall. After so many years without human contact, he was thrilled to see someone of his own kind. However, she tried not to look at him. He was standing there completely naked, and she could feel the heat rising through her body. He had lived among wolves for so long that clothing meant nothing to him. Then, with childlike excitement, he told the girl that her hair smelled especially nice and decided to show her his life among the wolves. Walking through the forest, she finally revealed the truth about her visit. She was searching for a clan of wolves that lived by the lake. Upon hearing this, John's expression darkened. He believed she might be an enemy. His fists clenched tightly as the wild wolf instinct within him surfaced, a primal force he could no longer control. Mimi began to tremble with fear. Then, as he approached her with dangerous intent, she stepped back in panic and slipped on a rock. By sheer luck, she managed to grab onto the branch of a tree, but with each passing second, her strength waned. The boy, worried, grabbed a handful of vines and, using his wild man instincts, climbed up the tree to reach her. He caught her hand just in time, pulling her into his arms. The two locked eyes with such intensity that they seemed to glimpse the stars hidden within each other's souls. Their lips were only inches apart. Was this desire? He studied her trembling eyes, her parted lips, but before the moment could deepen, they both heard a wild monkey through the forest. Without hesitation, John lifted her onto his back, carrying her like a sack despite her protests. Against his animal strength, she was utterly defenseless. Eventually, they arrived at his home, a cave hidden deep in the woods, where he had lived for 20 years. The revelation surprised the girl. It is a lonely and primitive place for someone who seemed half beast, half man. Without warning, he began removing his clothes, making the girl's heart race in panic. This man is bold. Even worse, he turned to her and told her to take off her clothes as well. Startled, she caught a glimpse of his bare back and quickly turned away, blushing furiously. John, puzzled by her behavior, dressed again and tried to ease the tension by showing her his collection of human objects, trinkets and tools he had gathered over the years. Amused by his childlike curiosity, Mimi pulled out her camera to take a picture. But when he took the camera in his hands, a photo of Mimi's family appeared on the screen. His expression softened. As memories of his long-lost family resurface, John becomes emotional, tears streaming down his face. Moved by his sorrow, Mimi stayed beside him to comfort him, yet she did not expect what came next. Driven by an untamed passion, he leaned closer and pressed his lips against hers. Shocked, Mimi immediately pulled away, warning him never to do that again. She forbade him from touching her lips. With his heart ablaze and his instincts roaring, John felt a hunger so deep it terrified even him, a hunger that could devour her whole. Trying to calm him down, she quickly cooked him some noodles before they both explored the forest together. Suddenly, John hears distant voices, hunters searching for the prized wolf pelts. Acting on instinct, he lunged forward, grabbed one of their rifles and bolted into the forest, forcing them to chase after him and leading them far away from the wolves' den. Eventually, he turned to face them. The men caught up, weapons ready, and a violent fight broke out. Fists flew, gunshots echoed, and chaos filled the air. Even though he was outnumbered, he fought with everything he had. Driven by the need to protect Mimi and the wolves, he managed to overpower them, but a tranquilizer dart struck his arm. Almost instantly, his body began to weaken, his vision blurred, and his legs gave out beneath him. He collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily as the world spun around him. The hunters threw him into a deep pit, deciding to deal with him later. That was where Mimi found him. When she stumbled upon the pit and saw him lying there, barely conscious, her heart froze. With the little strength he had left, he opened his eyes and whispered, "Find Father Wolf. He's the only one who can help." Mimi ran through the forest until she reached the wolf's cave. Between sobs, she told the alpha everything that had happened. Father Wolf's expression darkened immediately. He quickly led the pack away, just before the hunters arrive and throw in a grenade meant to sedate them. When they enter the cave and find it empty, they look confused. Suddenly they froze because a massive shadow leapt from the trees. It was Father Wolf. His eyes burned with fury as he lunged forward, taking them down one by one. The next morning, Mimi's mother and younger sister were deeply worried about her sudden disappearance. With the help of the neighbors, they organized a rescue team and set out into the forest to look for her. Meanwhile, John was overjoyed with his new companion and showed her every corner of the island as if she were his girlfriend. He warned her that the island was dangerous, that death could strike at any moment, which made her feel terrified. Then John crafted a crown of flowers for her, something she thought was just a sweet gesture, but in truth, it was a symbol of marriage. Curious, she asked him if he had a wolf girlfriend on the island. John smiled and explained that wolves and humans don't marry, and that he had never connected with any human before. She felt sorry for him, realizing that a life without love must be a lonely one. Then, John made an unbelievable request. He asked her to stay with him on the island forever. At that moment, a search group led by Hao Wei, Mimi's close friend, arrived and found the girl standing beside the father wolf. Thinking the creature was dangerous, they immediately surrounded him, ready to attack. The wolf bared his fangs in warning, but the group stood their ground. Suddenly, John leaped down from a tree, landing between them and his father to defend him. He grabbed a thick wooden branch and snapped it in half with his bare hands, stunning everyone. Then he charged forward, striking one of the men and sending chaos through the crowd. Later, he sank his teeth into one man's arm. Mimi called out, begging him to stop, and instantly he did, as if her voice alone could calm his heart. He walked toward her, but while he did, the others took the chance to hit him from behind with sticks, striking his back and arms. Yet, none of them could bring him down. His only goal was to reach the girl he loved. The crowd couldn't believe his strength or his determination as he fought his way forward, defeating everyone who stood in his path. When he finally reached her, John lifted Mimi into his arms as if she were his greatest treasure. But Hao Wei struck him first, and then the others joined in, beating him as he shielded Mimi with his body. Despite his incredible strength, he was eventually overwhelmed. Hao Wei took Mimi away, while John fell to the ground, his heart shattering as he watched her disappear. The next day, Father Wolf told him they would go to the city to find her, and together they embarked on a long journey until they finally reunited with Mimi at a vibrant Chinese festival. After the emotional reunion, they sat together in a quiet park where Mimi invited the protagonist to live with her family, reassuring him that Father Wolf would be welcome too. Though initially frightened, her family eventually accepted them, and soon John began learning human habits, washing the car, using a hairdryer, and shopping at the supermarket. That night, the family prepared a warm dinner to celebrate the arrival of their new guests. While everyone enjoyed the meal, John quietly remembered his wolf mother, and sadness filled his heart. To cheer him up the next morning, Mimi took him and Father Wolf to the Tree of Wishes. On their way, they encountered the bad guy, who clearly disapproved of John being in the city. He told Mimi about a fan meeting featuring a famous woman and grabbed her arm to lead her away, which enraged John. He leaped from the car and attacked the villain. Mimi managed to stop the fight and left for the event. while John, who didn't know how to drive, waited patiently by the road like a loyal dog. Then he spotted a young boy clinging to a tree branch, moments away from falling. Without hesitation, John climbed up effortlessly and rescued the child. But instead of gratitude, the boy's mother reacted with fear and anger, clutching her son and pulling him away. To her, the strange man, covered in dirt and scars, looked more like a monster than a savior. John watched them leave, and, as if the heavens shared his sorrow, rain began to pour down, drenching him in silence. After the incident, Mimi contacted John's uncle, the same man who had abandoned him in the forest years ago, whose number she found online. She told him she had found John and that he now lived with her, but the uncle lied, saying he had already found his nephew long ago while still asking for her address. Later that night, when Mimi returned home and realized John hadn't come back, she rushed into the storm to look for him. Fortunately, he was still waiting exactly where she had left him, and they both returned home drenched but safe. However, one neighbor accused John of something terrible, of having bitten her daughter with his fangs. John tried to explain that he was innocent, but because of his past, the townspeople feared that one day, in a fit of rage, he might hurt someone. The accusation sparked a heated argument among the neighbors. Some stood by John's side while others turned against him. Then Mimi comforted John, explaining that the neighbors judged him only because they didn't know him. Even so, John packed his belongings and decided to return to the forest with Father Wolf. Yet at the forest's edge, Mimi appeared, having followed him, and said softly, "I need you back in the village." John replied, "They'll kill me if I go back there." But Mimi was hiding a secret. She had been promised that John would be allowed to return if she could teach him how to live like a human. The first thing she did was teach him to read and write, and even gave him a last name, John Wolf. Later they gathered the family to share two important pieces of news. John planned to get a job to help with household expenses, and Mimi had been hired as a professional photographer. Excited, she offered him the position of her assistant so they could work together. The next day, they met the company's vice president, a woman who, to John's shock, turned out to be his mother. She had no idea she was standing before her long-lost son. So much time had passed that she no longer recognized him. He felt a deep sadness. He wanted to scream that he was her son, but for the sake of his mother's mental health, he chose to stay silent for now. The next morning, the same child was once again in danger. This time, he fell off a mountain. John immediately rushed to the base of the cliff, where the boy was clinging to a narrow ledge while the child's family watched from above, crying in despair, convinced he wouldn't survive. But John proved them wrong, showing the strength and courage of a true hero. With the boy tied to his back, he began the perilous ascent, gripping the cold rocks with bleeding hands. From above, Mimi watched in awe. His powerful arms, his steady determination. Her heart raced as she realized she was falling for him in the middle of the danger. Halfway up, John slipped and nearly fell, but managed to hold on with a single fingernail before continuing his climb. At last, after an exhausting struggle, he reached the summit, bringing the child safely back to his family. The townspeople hailed him as a hero, showering him with gifts and gratitude. Soon, every mother in the village wanted him to marry her daughter, which made Mimi secretly jealous. To keep the other girls away, she joked that none of them knew how to kiss properly, hoping John wouldn't even think about flirting with them. As he adapted to human life, he also discovered a new passion, skateboarding, which soon turned him into a local and online sensation. Meanwhile, his mother celebrated her son's birthday as she did every year, unaware that he was closer than she thought. At that moment, his uncle received a call from a private investigator confirming John's location, which worried him deeply. His secret might soon be exposed. Meanwhile, the protagonist was showing John around the city when suddenly he noticed a man approaching her. Without a second thought, he leapt forward and pinned the stranger to the ground. A group of nearby students witnessed the scene, squealing with excitement, saying things like, "He's so strong! I wish he was my boyfriend." The students swarmed around him, giggling and trying to get his attention. There's something about him that makes it impossible for women to look away. This was all because of the wild wolf instincts that still lingered in John, a natural energy that seemed to draw people to him effortlessly. And of course, Mimi wasn't immune to it. She found herself feeling strangely nervous around him, her heart racing every time he smiled or looked her way. John decided to take a shower outdoors and playfully grabbed a hose, splashing water at her. Mimi got upset at first, scolding him for acting like a child, but John laughed and told her to loosen up, to let her inner child out, just like they used to do back on the island. Some villagers teased them to kiss, but Mimi turned bright red and refused, too embarrassed to admit how flustered she truly felt. The last time she kissed someone was years ago, and John somehow makes her feel butterflies in her stomach again. The next day, during a company meeting, a viral photo of John skateboarding caught everyone's attention, and Howe proposed making him the new face of their brand. Uncle strongly objected for obvious reasons, but the rest of the team agreed, forcing him to hide John's true identity. That afternoon, Father Wolf gazed longingly at the forest from the rooftop, and John, noticing his sadness, took him there to visit his pack and gather food for the family. The next morning, the work team packed for a mountain hotel photo shoot. During the trip, John rode a bicycle while Mimi photographed him for the campaign, capturing his natural grace and energy. Later, the group relaxed in the hot springs, where two mischievous colleagues played a cruel prank on John, making him enter the women's bath by mistake. There, he accidentally saw Mimi and her sister both in the middle of a private conversation and quickly tried to leave, but Mimi noticed him, leading to an awkward moment. Suddenly, she felt dizzy, so John carried her to her room so she could rest. While walking in the park afterward, John met his uncle, who approached him for a chat. They rode bicycles together until the uncle fell and injured his foot, prompting John to carry him to the hospital. Grateful for his kindness, John's grandfather later invited both John and Mimi to a special dinner in his honor, which they gladly accepted. By the following week, John's photos were everywhere: magazines, stores, gyms, and online billboards, turning him into a nationwide sensation. Thanks to his charm, the campaign became a massive success, and he earned countless fans. Soon after, Howe informed them that Uncle wished to meet immediately, so John, Mimi, and Howe headed to the company for a confidential contract meeting that could change their lives. Since John's career was flourishing beyond expectations, Uncle decided to keep both his true identity and past a secret, wrapping him in an air of mystery to boost his fame. To ensure this secrecy, he prepared a confidentiality contract binding John for 2 full years, forbidding him from revealing any personal details to anyone. Encouraged by Mimi and knowing little about legal matters, John signed without hesitation, thus officially becoming known to the world as Prince of Wolf, the company's new ambassador. Yet, despite the title's prestige, he didn't seem entirely comfortable with it. During the press conference announcing his new role, his cheerful smile slowly faded into a solemn expression. However, the real issue lay elsewhere. After the event, Mimi began to distance herself, as his newfound celebrity status prevented them from being seen together. Fearing it could damage his image and career, John struggled with the separation and tried to understand love the only way he knew: by watching romantic dramas with Father Wolf, hoping to learn how humans handled relationships. Just then, Mimi walked in and John quickly hid his laptop so she wouldn't see what he was watching. Curious, she asked what he was hiding, but John nervously avoided the question and rushed out to the terrace. There, he pressed play, and he focused intently on how the characters kissed, trying to understand how humans expressed affection. The boy had to step out, and when Mimi went up to the rooftop and was about to check the computer, John covered her eyes, giving himself time to close it. But now, standing face to face with her, he couldn't help but notice how close they were. Her presence made his heart race. Gathering his courage, he leaned in and kissed her softly. Their lips met, tender, hesitant at first, like an unspoken promise. The warmth of that moment surrounded them both, as if time itself had melted away, leaving only the quiet rhythm of their hearts, a pure moment that marked the beginning of a genuine connection between them. Yet despite their love, a public relationship was impossible, something John couldn't understand. Why can't we live our love freely? Why can't people accept it? He asked. Having grown up in the wilderness, far from the judgmental eyes of society, John couldn't grasp why love had to hide in silence. The next day, he sneaked out of work to visit Mimi, who was spending time with her friends. The sudden appearance of the famous Prince of Wolf caused a commotion in the restaurant. He took her to a quiet place away from curious eyes and felt a storm rise within him just from seeing her face up close. "I need you in my life, because without you, the world feels too heavy to bear." For a moment, she wanted to kiss him, but she knew it would be a mistake. Frustrated by the chaos he'd caused, she raised her voice so everyone could hear. "I want you out of my life!" Her words shattered his heart as she turned away and walked off into the storm. When she got home exhausted, she fell asleep, while John stayed outside waiting in the pouring rain. Moments later, her sister discovered that Mimi had developed a severe fever and alerted the family. Realizing what was happening, John rushed in, carrying her to the hospital where doctors immediately treated her. After tense minutes of uncertainty, the doctor reported that Mimi had fallen unconscious due to illness and had to remain hospitalized for several days, the rain and cold having worsened her condition. Blaming John for letting her leave, her sister's words weighed heavily on him, filling him with guilt as he spent the entire night by Mimi's bedside. The next morning, determined to help, he ventured into the forest to gather medicinal herbs, injuring himself along the way. Upon returning, he prepared an herbal tonic for Mimi, but when her sister found him there, she angrily forced him to leave. Mimi eventually regained consciousness, recovering thanks to the very herbs he had prepared. Meanwhile, her parents consulted with the doctor about performing a blood cord transplant, as stem cells might completely heal her. They decided to use her sister as a donor, who readily agreed, until their mother bluntly stated, "We had another daughter just for Mimi," implying her sister's existence was only meant to serve her needs. The words crushed her spirit. Later, on the rooftop, Mimi and John reunited tenderly after her recovery. The next morning, John and Mimi headed to work as usual. From a distance, John spotted his mother and ran after her, but a bodyguard hired by his uncle blocked his path. At that very moment, Uncle sat in his office staring at a photo of Howe holding a diploma inscribed with, "My son's graduation." Yes, Howe, the guy who loves Mimi, is his son, though no one else knows this secret. That evening, John invited Mimi to the movies, and like an ordinary couple, they held hands while keeping his identity hidden behind oversized sunglasses. He was so famous that just stepping outside caused a stampede of girls, so they had to hide from that crazy group of fans while only a few centimeters separated their lips. Just when they were thinking about making love in bed, his mother invited them over to the house. For the first time in years, his mother cooked her son's favorite dishes, feeling a strange, inexplicable warmth as if their souls were still connected. When John tasted the meal, vivid memories of his childhood flooded back, and he ate joyfully. After dinner, he spoke privately with his mother, thanking her and carefully asking about her son's name to confirm what he already suspected, that she was indeed his mother. But as soon as he started talking about his lost son, she began to cry as if she felt a deep hatred toward him for disappearing. For that reason, he didn't tell her the truth and left feeling heartbroken. Later that night, as Mimi and Howe returned home, John spotted them sharing an embrace. This drove him crazy with jealousy. For the first time, he felt that old killer instinct coming back, just like when he lived in the jungle. Man, you'd better watch out for John. After that, John became wilder than ever, completely captivated by the girl's hypnotic lips. "I want to kiss you," he said. She could feel the burning passion inside him, so intense it almost scared her. For a moment, she feared he might bite her in the middle of their kiss, yet that same fear only made her feelings for him grow stronger. Later, the grandfather, deeply moved by the affection between them, decided to make him his godson, a gesture that filled the mother with joy. John, however, kindly declined, explaining that he could not abandon his new family and jokingly added that they would never let him bring Father Wolf into the house. The following day, a mysterious young woman arrived in town, Chung Shu, John's childhood friend. Passing by Mimi's household, she was surprised to see Father Wolf at the gate. Instead of running away like any normal person, she crouched on all fours to greet him and asked to be his friend. Apparently, she too could communicate with wolves. From inside, John saw her and curiously asked how she had learned that pose. She explained she was a wildlife photographer who had worked in several zoos, studying wolf behavior extensively, and revealed her true purpose. She had come to the forest searching for a dear friend who had vanished years ago. She offered John food in exchange for helping her find him, but since he did not remember her, he refused. Undeterred, Shu set off into the forest alone. Meanwhile, his mother waited for her at the bus station, unable to reach her due to the lack of signal in the mountains. By coincidence, John was also there, and upon hearing her concerns, volunteered to accompany her into the woods. Together, they eventually found Shu unharmed. Shu confided in John that his mother had once lost her son there many years ago, confirming at last what fate had already written. She was his mother. Even after discovering the truth about his past, John chose to act as if nothing had changed and to live peacefully beside his beloved Mimi. Together with Father Wolf, he secretly rented a car and a hotel room for two, planning a surprise getaway for her. And the next morning, they set off along a long mountain highway. Although neither of them knew the exact location of the hotel, they drove in circles for hours, passing the same places repeatedly until the car accidentally slipped into a roadside ditch. Luckily, John managed to lift it out effortlessly, and they continued their journey until they finally reached a luxurious hotel, where they enjoyed a beautiful evening and, for the first time, spent the night together. Unfortunately, the next morning, Howe called Mimi. There was an urgent company meeting and they had to return immediately. Upon arriving, Howe explained that a fan event would soon be held to promote their products and increase the brand's popularity. They organized a photo shoot by the lake, where Mimi worked alongside Howe inspecting the event site. That night, John decided it was finally time to confess his love, because without a confession, there was no true romance. Nervous, he took a walk with Father Wolf to calm his thoughts. But along the way, they encountered a group of young men armed with metal rods who, for no reason, attacked them. Father Wolf was injured in the leg, and, filled with rage, John fought back fiercely, overpowering them all. Unbeknownst to him, a hidden man recorded everything from the bushes and later sent the footage to his uncle. The next day, the much-anticipated fan meeting took place, with hundreds of excited girls waiting to see the Prince of Wolf. John, visibly anxious, hid in his dressing room until Mimi offered him a few comforting words. Shu also gave him flowers, telling him he was especially handsome. As she left, she accidentally dropped her wallet, revealing a childhood photo of John, his mother, and herself, leaving him visibly shaken, still unsure whether he truly was her lost son. At the event, Uncle maliciously played the recording of John fighting the thugs on the giant screen for everyone to see. The fans gasped in disbelief, and within minutes the crowd turned against him, shouting insults and walking out in disappointment. The scandal caused the company's stocks to plummet instantly. To contain the crisis, his mother decided to sever all ties with John, while Uncle insisted on terminating his contract and launching an emergency PR campaign to repair the brand's image. Devastated and betrayed, John found that no one believed in him, no one except Mimi. But this isn't the only problem. Neighbors had begun complaining about him, claiming he is dangerous and should leave the neighborhood. Heartbroken but resolute, John decided to take Father Wolf back to the mountains, honoring his promise never to abandon him. Mimi desperately tried to stop him, but his decision was final. Before leaving, he gave her a small whistle, telling her to use it if she ever needed him. Then, after gently laying her on the couch, he disappeared into the forest with Father Wolf under the cover of night. Though far away, John secretly visited from time to time, leaving gifts for them, fruits, flowers, and herbal medicines. Meanwhile, Shu told his mother that Wolf was in fact her long-lost son John, who had finally returned after 2 decades. Without hesitation, his mother gathered the Tien family, and together they headed into the forest to find him. Fortunately, Mimi blew the whistle, and John, recognizing the sound, ran toward it. There he found them, including his mother. Overwhelmed with emotion, she pleaded with him to come home, leave the forest, and start a new life with his family. But John refused, determined to stay. His heart broke, yet his resolve remained. Then, in a deeply moving moment, Father Wolf brought him his belongings and insisted he go with his family, not wanting his adopted son to live alone. Before John could stop him, Father Wolf ran off into the forest, disappearing forever, forcing John to return home with his mother, his heart heavy with sorrow. Back at the house, everyone celebrated his return, and he promised Mimi they would soon visit the Tree of Wishes together. However, Hao-wei was far from happy. John's reappearance meant he was no longer the family's heir. Uncle, equally threatened, concocted a cruel scheme to ruin him. He got John and Shu drunk, took a photo of them asleep in each other's arms, and sent it to Mimi, who was waiting at the Tree of Wishes. Upon seeing the picture, Mimi broke down in tears, believing he had betrayed her, and impulsively decided to move to the United States for work, vanishing for an entire year. When John woke up in the hotel room and found her gone, he rushed to the Tree of Wishes, but she was no longer there. He ran to her house, only for his mother to tell him that Mimi had already left for the airport. He hurried there, but by the time he arrived, it was too late. Her plane had departed. During the year of her absence, John lived in solitude, pouring his pain into hard work. He studied tirelessly, mastering every aspect of the company until he became a top candidate for the position of general manager. To secure the role, however, he had to face Hao-wei in a competition where both would design marketing strategies to boost the firm's sales. In the midst of their preparation, he received a call from Shu. She was traveling again and currently at the airport. Coincidentally, fate intervened once more. Mimi is there too. When John rushed to the terminal and spotted her, she looked at him coldly, still wounded by the betrayal, and he ignored her completely, walking past as if she didn't exist, still bitter over being abandoned. It was clear their relationship was broken. John cursed her in silence, wishing misfortune upon her, his heart burning with rage. Later, John and Shu were strolling through the city when they stumbled upon a group of factory workers protesting to prevent the plant's closure. Moved by their pleas, John promised them that the company would not shut down, filling everyone with renewed hope. Among the crowd stood Mimi, who, impressed by his determination, asked him for an interview, but he refused. However, John developed a fever that left him dizzy and confused. Upon seeing Mimi, he impulsively grabbed her hand and kissed her. She tried to pull away, but the kiss lingered longer than she expected. Watching them, the other girl felt a wave of jealousy rise within her. For a few long moments, it was as if the world around them had stopped until they finally broke apart. The following morning, they crossed paths at work. They did not speak of the incident, but a fleeting touch of hands revealed their lingering emotions. That night, John visited Mimi and invited her on a motorcycle ride. Delighted, she agreed, and they spent the whole night riding under the city lights. By dawn, he confessed that he had spent an entire year searching for her, while she angrily reminded him that he had left her waiting at the Tree of Wishes. Both of their hearts were still scarred by the pain of the past, but destiny, with a little help from Cupid, had a surprise in store for them. The family hosted a small birthday party for John. As a heartfelt gift, his mother presented all the presents she had kept since his disappearance. Childhood clothes that no longer fit, an old notebook, even a toy airplane pen. While playing badminton, Shu twisted her ankle, and John carried her home, an act of kindness that made her fall deeply for him. Curious, she asked Mimi if she still loved John, and Mimi hesitantly replied, no. But no one believes her. Of course she loves him. That same moment, Mimi received a call from her doctor and rushed to the hospital, where she learned a devastating truth. She had aplastic anemia, a severe illness where her body could no longer produce enough red blood cells, putting her life in danger. Her only chance for survival was a bone marrow transplant. Distraught, Mimi wandered to the park and, without thinking, blew softly on the whistle John had given her, then instantly regretted it. However, John heard the call and prepared to leave, only for Shu, who lived with him, to stop him. He gently told her, "A wolf only recognizes one mate for life," a bittersweet rejection that cut deep. He then left to find his she-wolf, Mimi. At the park, he saw Mimi with Hao Wei, who confessed his feelings for her. Overwhelmed by her illness and emotions, she cried and hugged him. John, misinterpreting the scene, believed she had chosen Hao Wei and walked away heartbroken. Mimi told Hao Wei about her diagnosis. There was only a 30% chance she would survive. He asked if that was why she had gone abroad for a year, and she explained it had been because of the photo showing John and Shu in each other's arms. Hao Wei assured her they had simply been drunk, but she insisted John had broken his promise to meet her under the Tree of Wishes. Realizing his father's hand in all this, Hao Wei confronted Uncle, who shamelessly admitted he had manipulated everything so his son would inherit the company. Shu, overhearing the confession, joined Hao Wei in devising a plan to reunite John and Mimi. She invited John to a restaurant under false pretenses, but overcome by guilt and jealousy, she suddenly kissed him just as Mimi walked in and saw them. Shocked and heartbroken, Mimi fled. Hao Wei stormed in, furious, showing John the photo his uncle had taken years ago, confirming his deceit. Enraged, John ran after Mimi, who in tears shouted that she was dying. Without hesitation, he wrapped her in his arms, promising he would stay by her side through everything, good or bad. She, however, urged him to move on with another woman before walking away, leaving him shattered. Days later, Mimi and her sister took a short vacation at a hotel in the city, where they stumbled upon John singing a heartfelt song. Though initially upset, Mimi softened, and slowly their bond began to heal. His mother revealed her wish to arrange a marriage between John and Shu, believing they would make a perfect pair. But before any decision was made, Hao Wei and John arrived, and grandfather proposed a new challenge: a business competition to design a bicycle sales campaign, with the winner becoming the company's next general manager. After the meeting, John confronted Uncle, accusing him of every cruel act he had committed, including abandoning him as a child in the forest. Uncle coldly replied that he had never heard his cries, and therefore bore no guilt, shameless as ever. The following day, John organized a large bike race as part of his campaign project, but tragedy struck when a tent collapsed on a crowd, injuring a little girl. Hao Wei's friends discovered that the site construction had been managed by a man named Mr. Huan. When they tracked him down, they caught Uncle bribing him. The entire disaster had been staged. Hao Wei followed them and overheard them confessing that Uncle had abandoned his nephew in the woods years ago. Stricken with guilt and disgust, Hao Wei returned home and announced he was withdrawing from the competition, claiming he was not fit to be general manager. His father exploded with rage, but Hao Wei boldly declared he knew the full truth. The next day, Shu's mother arrived in town to discuss her daughter's arranged marriage proposal, and without even asking John, the grandfather suddenly announced that the wedding would be between Shu and him. Mimi felt her heart shatter, but before she could say a word, John took her hand and declared, "The one I love is Mimi. She's the star of my universe." His family was stunned into silence, unable to believe what they'd just heard. The incident deeply upset Mimi, who ran away in tears. John rushed after her but failed to stop her, and she returned home heartbroken. Later that evening, John found Mimi on her rooftop, and after a brief but emotional argument, they reconciled once again. The next day, John surprised Mimi with a beautifully decorated venue filled with balloons and photos of their memories together. There, he knelt before her and proposed with a stunning ring. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, to have children, grow old together, and one day become grandparents. Feeling your love is the greatest gift I could ever receive." Overjoyed, Mimi said yes without hesitation, and their friends cheered with happiness. But just when everything seemed perfect, Mimi suddenly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital where her family learned about her critical condition. Her parents immediately asked her sister to donate bone marrow, but she became furious, feeling they never cared about her emotions, and ran away. Though her anger was understandable, her timing could not have been worse. Her sister's life hung by a thread. Thankfully, after an intense treatment, Mimi survived and recovered. Grateful for her second chance, she and John headed to the forest to visit Father Wolf. After searching for some time, they found the old wolf lying weakly on the ground. Mimi stayed with him in the cave while John climbed a nearby mountain to gather medicinal herbs. When he returned, he fed them to Father Wolf, who slowly regained his strength. That night, the three of them rested together under the tranquil forest sky. John brought Mimi to a family dinner at the Dew residence. But Grandfather became furious when he saw them holding hands and threatened to cut all ties unless John ended the relationship. Choosing love over status, John resigned from his position at the company. That evening, Mimi and her sister finally reconciled, and she returned home to apologize to her parents. The following morning, while jogging through the city, John overheard Uncle secretly meeting Mr. Juan, plotting how to get rid of his nephew once and for all. Outraged, John confronted his uncle and vowed to make him pay for everything. Later, he and Mimi prepared for a small wedding. She got ready in a simple but elegant white dress, while John parked the car before heading to the venue. But fate intervened again. Just as he crossed the street, a speeding car approached, ready to hit him. Earlier, he had met with his uncle, hoping to reconcile and put the past behind them, so Uncle called off the attack. However, the driver ignored the order and headed straight toward John. At that very moment, Shu and Haowei happened to be nearby. Seeing the car racing toward him, Haowei pushed John out of the way, taking the full impact himself. Uncle rushed to the scene, horrified at the sight of his gravely injured son. In tears, he confessed to his father and sister everything he had done to both Haowei and John. Seeking redemption, he gave John his blessing to marry Mimi. The long-awaited day finally arrived. Mimi and John married in a charming church, surrounded by family and friends. Afterward, they spent their honeymoon on a sunny beach. But not long after, Mimi had to undergo surgery. A few days later, she bid farewell to her loved ones before entering the operating room. The nurses rushed around frantically. Mimi had developed a life-threatening infection, and immediate surgery was her only hope. Her family waited in anguish. Then, a time skip. A year later, John now lived a quiet, simple life, haunted by visions of Mimi's ghost, suggesting she had not survived. But during the company's grand 40th anniversary masquerade gala, a familiar figure appeared. Mimi, alive, stepping onto the dance floor to surprise everyone and share a heartfelt dance with her husband. The story flashed back to the day of the operation. The doctor exited the operating room and joyfully told the family that everything had gone perfectly. The next day, Mimi walked out of the hospital healthy and radiant, reuniting with those she loved most. A few days later, John blindfolded her and led her home to a surprise. Heart-shaped balloons filled the room, and a cake waited in the kitchen. When she opened her eyes, he gave her a plane ticket to Japan so she could finally pursue her dream of becoming a professional photographer. Later, John resigned as company director and announced that Haowei would take his place as the new leader. Suddenly, Mimi fainted, but the doctors later revealed it was not illness. It was pregnancy. They were going to have a baby. This is the happiest moment of their lives. Together, they're building a family. He knows he's found the most precious woman in the world, and she's discovered her one true love. Years later, Mimi and John are proud parents. Their young son had grown into a curious explorer who loved accompanying his father on adventures. During one of their trips to the mountains, while John took a phone call from Mimi, the boy wandered into the woods alone. Panicked, Mimi and John raced into the forest searching for him, only to find the child safe and sound on the back of Father Wolf. Overwhelmed with joy, the family reunited, the four of them together once more. As they visited the Tree of Wishes, Mimi revealed to her husband and son that she was expecting another baby, bringing tears of happiness to John's eyes as he hugged her tightly. And so ended this unforgettable story, a tale of love, family, forgiveness, and destiny that thankfully closed not in tragedy but in a beautiful new beginning.